If I've ever had an example in my life where a car is more than a car, this one's it. And I'm about to tell you the story of myself and one of my best friends, who, as my grandmother has said, has sadly gone on to see about it. '70 Torino GT 302 small block with a 3-speed, the most base model Torino GT you could get in 1970. Why do I have that car? Well, it all goes back to when I first got to Cypress, Texas in 1981 or 80. I don't remember right now. It was a while back. And I met a guy named John Haley at high school, and he had a 1970 Torino, and I believe that one was actually a GT, and it was either a 70 or 71, I don't remember. I know it had the GT hood on it, so I don't even know, it might not have even been a GT, but it did have the GT hood. So he had a fastback Torino, kind of like this one, when I first met him. And shortly thereafter, that car pooped the bed and it died. And John had to have a different car to drive around because he was working and, you know, all the stuff of going to school in high school back in the 80s. And so he found a 1971, I believe, Thunderbird with a big block 429 in it. It was a fun car at speed. It was a brown car, so we called it the Turd. It was actually a hideous automobile. No hubcaps. The quarter vinyl roof on it was popped up in the center, so you'd get up on 290 out by the school, run along at about 40 miles an hour, and it would pop up in the air and make a snapping noise. And the dang thing was tough. I will give it that. It never came off. But it would catch wind, and that thing, oh my gosh, it got bad gas mileage. No matter what John and I did to it, it got terrible gas mileage. And he kept the Turd, I think, on up until 1983 or so, and he asked me, hey man, can we find something? Because I'm out of school now, and he was working at a photo place near downtown Houston, and he lived out in Cypress. It was about, I don't know, a 14 or 15, maybe 20-mile trip into his job every day. And the Thunderbird was eating him alive. You know, I mean, 8-9 miles a gallon. So I started looking around. I finally did find him something. I found him that Torino right there. Yep, right there in, I think in my area around where I lived, which was over in Bear Creek area. And I found that Torino in some guy's backyard. It was a running driving car, but it wasn't perfect. It needed tires and a few other things, like just about everything else you can find out there in the market. So John bought it in 1984. We know that because the title I have says 1984 on it, so I know that's when he picked it up. John absolutely loved that car. He drove the wheels off of it. Everything he did, everywhere he went in that car. He was infatuated with it. He was in love with it. And he was the largest procrastinator I have ever known in my life. I have other friends that procrastinate. They're amateurs next to John, and I'll prove it to you with what I'm about to tell you. John and I sat down in the late 80s, early 90s, and started coming up with a list of things that we needed to do. And I believe we had actually gotten an Autocrafter's catalog from back in the day to get parts from for the Torino. Not that there was a ton of stuff out there for them, but they did have a catalog that had Torino stuff in it. It may not have been Autocrafters. I know we had a parts list, but I'm pretty sure it was Autocrafters. And there's actually a piece of paper around that has both my stuff and his stuff on the piece of paper. His writing, my writing. And he never did any of it. And it became a running joke for us when we would talk to each other. Hey, John, what'd you get done on the Torino? I gotta wait on a couple things. I'm not quite ready to get started. Literally every phone conversation, every time I would go to his apartment, every time I would go to his house, every time I would talk to him, it was, I got a couple more things to do and then I'll get started on it. He drove it for a long time. I believe he had it in the road until about 94 or 95. And it just started getting long in the tooth and it had some problems coming up, and he finally parked it and bought, I believe, an F-150 Ford pickup truck to drive every day. And drive it he did, and that car stayed in the garage pretty much its whole life after that in the mid-90s. And there were times when it sat outside, and don't get me wrong, that car saw a lot of abuse. That car stayed down at Galveston Beach a good bit because John liked the beach. He didn't go down to the beach during the day, he would go down to the beach at night, and he would go out to the very far end of Galveston Island where there was nothing at the time, and park it out there and just smoke cigarettes and sit on the hood of that car. And I would go down there with him sometimes. I'd bring my Mach 1, but I never really drove it on the beach like he did. I was always keeping it up on the road because I knew what the salt air was going to do to the car. And so it's developed a few rust issues simply because of where he had the car. And I think there were a couple of times, maybe 4 or 5 times, he took it out into the surf driving it. I'm not double sure on that, but I got to believe it because of some of the rust I see on it. Fast forward to 2016. Well, actually a little earlier than that, John was diagnosed with throat cancer. And life got hard for him. And we still joked about the Torino. We would still say, hey John, when are you gonna do something with it? And John would say, soon, got a couple more things to do. I remember I got the call from Becky that John had passed away at work. He worked right up until the very end of his life. He was at work when he died. They found him at the Bay where he worked at the automotive dealership he was at, and he was gone. I kind of wanted to ask Becky for the car, but I felt that would be really bad. It wasn't because I was like, ooh, I really greedily want this car. I just wanted it because it was John's and it had been his, and he was my best friend in high school, and we were really great friends after high school, and so many things. But I felt weird about asking about it. Then, and I believe 2018 or 19, I think it was 2018, Becky, his wife, called me and she said, hey Jeff, do you want John's Torino? It really wasn't even a decision. I overpaid her for the car because I wanted to help her out. Becky and John mean a lot to me. They have been friends of mine for a long, long time. And because of John's passing, you know, she needed a little bit of money help, so I tried to help her out. So I didn't pay for the car what I probably would have paid for it if I bought it from some jackleg in Katy, Texas, but I felt good about what I did. And my wife, Deanna, she felt the same way. She felt like it was a good idea. So we slowly paid her off, gave her a payment every month until we paid it off, and I believe we had it paid off at the end of 2019. I made the call to Becky and I said, hey, Becky, we're gonna come get the car sometimes in 20. We all know what happened in 2020. America shut down for a while because of certain illnesses. And we were unable to go get the car. Then 21 came around, 22 came around, 23 came around, and finally this year, my friend Stephen Holtz said, I'm going to get the Torino and bring it to you. You can check out Stephen's channel here. It's called Just Drive It. He's got a great little channel where he does all kind of crazy stuff. That man is the busiest human being I know. I am always impressed by what Stephen will and can do. That dude is in the road a lot. So check out his channel. He does a lot of crazy stuff out there in the world. He's based in Texas near where Becky's at, and so he got the car and he brought it here to me. And it's funny when you pick up something like a set of keys, and it's the keys that had his It was a Marshall Ford key set that he'd had on the key fob for that thing for, gosh, I don't even know how long. Because he worked at Marshall Ford for ages and ages. And I grabbed that key set, and it was almost like when I grabbed my dad's key set. It was like he was there for a second. So for me, that one over there is not about, I don't know, it's not about the car. I'm not, you know, I'm not a big Torino fan. I love them. They're really cool cars, but I'm not. I already have a Fairlane station wagon from my friend Steve Raby. I collect cars from my friends for some reason. Anyway, I have this car now from John because of him. Because it's a talisman. It's a thing that kind of keeps John alive in my mind. And every time I come out here and I look at it, I think about John. There's a dang lizard on the dash panel. And I don't know if John put that in there or one of the kids put that in there because I heard him call it the Lizard, but that's the name of that car. It's the Lizard. I have no idea how much we're going to be able to get done. I'm going to do my dead level best to fully fix that car up the way John would have wanted it, but I don't know. I mean, I'm 61 years old, and the rate that I normally move on an automobile, we're in trouble. Because I am pretty slow. But this one means something to me. This one's different. This one's not just a car I have. This one's not a thing. It's funny how life will give you stuff that makes you think of people that matter to you. Like my dad's keys, that Torino, the red station wagon makes me think of my buddy Steve. And I guess I'm just too sentimental to say no. Anyway, there's going to be stuff coming up on this Torino. We have a video that kind of goes into what all came with the car, what the car is, what it isn't, and it's going to point out some of the frailties and foibles on this car, which are almost legion now that I've got it here, I've found out. But we do plan on doing things to it. We do plan on making this a nice car. I don't know if we'll ever be able to make that happen, but we're going to do our best to try and make it a nice vehicle for me. I'll be honest with you, I'd rather have John back. I'd take him over any Torino or Mustang or whatever. His friendship meant a lot to me. Y'all do me a favor. Be kind to each other, love on each other, treat each other nice. You have a great week. We'll see you later. The Lizard.
Well, Jeff, I saw this stuff and I was real tempted to just, you know, what?
Problem is, I do know where you live.
Yes, you do. Congratulations, man. Glad to see it finally got here.
Yeah, me too. That is the work of it. A lot of work.
In all honesty, I have too many cars, so I'm happy you're taking
I figured
this.
you would probably do that. But he bought it in 1984, got it titled. Cool.
Just like always, they're tools. It's about people.
It is about people. All right, there we go.